Rebello now apologizes for the confusion about the exemption of workers from the government's no vaccination, no ride policy. And we got news from music fans. An OPM singer is marking her 10th anniversary in the industry with a concert, while emo punk bands are coming together for a music fest in Las Vegas. The country lists its first deaths from the highly transmissible Omicron coronavirus variant. The health department says these two fatalities were both more than 60 years old, unvaccinated, and had pre-existing medical conditions. The two are among the new Omicron cases health officials detected. Out of 714 samples included in the latest genome sequencing, 492, or nearly 69%, were found with Omicron. Now, this brings the total tally of Omicron cases to 535. Of the additional Omicron infections, 3 patients are still sick, 467 have recovered, and 20 others are for verification. The DOH also says over 300 are local cases, while 160 are returning overseas Filipinos. Most of the local cases have indicated addresses here in Metro Manila. The DOH on Tuesday said Omicron is already the predominant variant in the capital region. Other local cases are found in the Calabar Zone and Central Luzon regions, as well as in the northern part of Luzon and in parts of the Visayas and Mindanao. The Cordillera Administrative Region is among the top 5 regions contributing to the rising COVID-19 cases these past days. Among the areas there showing an unprecedented increase in infections is Baguio City, where 2 local Omicron cases have been detected. Our Carlin Bonkin has more.
From less than 10 COVID-19 cases a day in early December, infections in Baguio City shot to nearly 500 per day the past week. Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong says the Omicron variant may have been driving the surge before Christmas. The city has 2 local Omicron cases. Both have no recent travel history outside Baguio. One of them got infected as early as December 14th.
Safe to say na one week before December 14th, nagkaroon na ng transmission, local transmission sa Baguio City. Na-aggravate lalo yan during Christmas and New Year. Yung time na yan talaga na-aggravate kasi talagang matindi yung akyat ng ating mobility graph.
Nearly 4,000 people in the summer capital are still recovering from infection as of Monday, and cases are growing by the day. Okta research says a COVID patient in Baguio could infect up to 4 people, an indication the virus is spreading fast.
Mukhang hindi pa siya nag-peak. And it could go up to higher numbers. The reproduction number in Baguio that we're seeing is still high. Siya yung pinaka-affected by Omicron next to Metro Manila.
While most of the cases are mild, 73% of ICU beds, isolation beds, and ventilators there are in use. The city government is bringing back additional COVID beds previously freed up for other illnesses.
Kukunti lang ang severe at critical cases natin. Kaya lang, may mga mild cases tayo na nasa ospital. Bakit? Kasi may comorbidity. Kunwari, may cancer. Nasa stage 3 or then sa stage 4.
In a bid to curb the surge in cases, children aged 11 and younger, as well as the unvaccinated 12 to 17-year-olds, are barred from going out.
Except if they want to go to the parks, if they want to go to the gardens, basta open spaces,
While the city has temporarily shut its borders from tourists, contact tracers continue to work double time. The city is also buying more antigen tests and antiviral pills. La Trinidad Benguet, which is close to Baguio, also gears up for COVID surge by building an additional isolation facility.
Last January 6 lang, 5 lang ang facilities, active facilities. Noong January 7, naging 20 hanggang tumaas, hanggang maging 824 kahapon. Once na ma-inspect ng DOH yun, we are going to prepare for whatever kung talagang magsasearch dito sa munisipyo ng Trinidad.
Most of the COVID patients in La Trinidad only have mild symptoms and are isolated at home. Mayor Salda says their good vaccine coverage helped prevent COVID cases from overwhelming their hospitals and isolation facilities. Caroline Bongkin, CNN Philippines.
The Labor Department apologizes for the confusion arising from the implementation of the no vaccination, no ride policy.
Apologize to the public for that kasi as I was telling Secretary Carlo of the CABSEC na kailangan pa ng massive information drive about this policy.
Although workers are generally exempted from this policy, a number of labor groups insist it is anti-poor. More from Stanley Gahete.
Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello III made the clarification on Tuesday following the uproar over the no vaccine, no ride policy. He said workers with proper identification are exempted from the ruling in Metro Manila, which is currently under Alert Level 3. The policy was first implemented on Monday.
Dahil hindi pa po nakapagpa-vaccine, paano naman po sila mag-work? Kung hindi sila makapag-ride, paano sila makakalabas?
Pinababa po kami ngayon kasi hinahanapan po kami ng mga ID vaccine card. Wala pa po akong vaccine card. Nakapabaksin pa lang po ako ngayon dyan sa may circle.
Bello said many people were unduly deprived of essential services, including public transportation, because of their lack of access to vaccines. He said workers can now use jeepneys, buses and trains just by presenting their company ID or certificate of employment. The non-vaccinated, meanwhile, will be brought to nearby inoculation centers.
Meron pa akong kalituan nung Monday, hindi ko kagaya ngayon. So ngayon, sir, ang nahuhuli namin sa ngayon, more on social distancing na lang, doon sa health protocol na lang, sir.
It was smoother on the third day of implementation, though some passengers were still having a hard time getting a ride because of the 70% maximum capacity rule in public transport. The number of traffic enforcers on the road was also hampering the ease of riding. Despite the improving situation, many transport and labor groups still believe the no vaccine, no ride policy is anti-poor, saying private vehicles should also be checked on vaccinated passengers.
Alam naman natin na halos na bankrupt yung transport sector natin for the past 2 years.
Yung clarification ni Secretary Bello ay hindi pa rin sapat. Sa actual practice kasi, iba ang mga polisiya na nakasulat o yung ina-announsyo sa national level, malinaw na ito ay diskriminasyon, ito ay anti-poor.
The Transportation Department maintains that not all workers are exempted from the policy, as some businesses are still not allowed to operate under Alert Level 3. But one expert believes the policy will not make a big difference for a number of reasons, including the continued movement of unvaccinated people. He says granular lockdown is better than blanket ECQ, MECQ lockdown.
This means that if we're going to restrict the unvaccinated, still vaccinated people can share the virus.
The implementation of the policy may be improving, but many still believe it's not timely, as the labor sector has yet to recover from the effects of the pandemic. Stanley Gahete, CNN Philippines.
The governor of Cebu Province, Gwen Garcia, says there will be no discrimination against the unvaccinated, contrary to what is imposed, she says, by the national government. This means vaccination cards will not be a requirement for employment, education, government transactions, and entering establishments or using public transportation. Garcia says, quote, "We are still a nation of laws," unquote, and that establishments only need to encourage others to get vaccinated. In Cebu City, which is independent from Cebu Province, Mayor Michael Rama only encourages establishments to come up with their own policies and has not yet issued any directive related to unvaccinated individuals. It's a different story in northern Samar, where an executive order was issued to limit the movement of the unvaccinated Public and private establishments must put up a signage of no vaccination card, no entry. Unvaccinated individuals shall be required to present a negative RT-PCR test result every 2 weeks at their personal expense before they report to work. If there is no negative RT-PCR test or original copy of the vaccination card, a certification from the Bureau of Quarantine may be presented instead for those traveling to and from the province. Rider groups call for more benefits amid the Omicron variant threat. The kapatiran ng dalawang gulong as well as motorcycle hailing app, City Number PH, say delivery riders serve companies and customers without basic benefits such as healthcare services. The groups urge the government to prioritize vaccination of riders so they will be allowed to pass through some borders. In the meantime, House Transportation Chairman Representative Edgar Sarmiento assures riders that companies offering delivery services will have more liability under the Motorcycle for Hire Regulation Bill that is expected to be passed next week.
Yung ating mga service delivery companies like Grab, Lalamove, at Foodpanda ay ang naging combined income nila during the pandemic ay umabot ng $9 million. So ganun kasi yung kinita ng ating mga kumpanya during the pandemic. And yet, yun nga, ang problema natin ngayon ay paano nakikinabang ang ating mga delivery riders. Since wala po silang SSS, wala silang PhilHealth, wala silang pag-ibig.
Kasama po doon sa batas natin yung food delivery riders. Ano? At in fact, kasama, in fact, sinama rin doon sa batas na ginawa natin. At hopefully, para sa atang version ng Senate at saka ng House, kasama rin po ang liability po ng itong systems holder. Hindi lang po si motorsiklo kasi dati may na-aksidente, hindi man lang tinulungan ng kumpanya. Hindi na ata po pwede ngayon yan. And the liability of the drivers is the liability of the company as well.
Straight ahead, the printing of ballots for the May elections has been deferred because of technical errors. And Asia's Phoenix prepares for a concert marking her 10th year in the industry. Keep it here on CNN Philippines. Welcome back to Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. Authorities are still hunting down 2 more inmates who bolted the maximum security compound of the new Bilibid prison in Muntinlupa on Monday. Police in Metro Manila and nearby provinces have been alerted to the immediate arrest of Chris Ablas and Raquilu Falcon, both convicted for robbery with homicide. Falcon also has pending murder, frustrated murder, and robbery charges. The Bureau of Corrections described them as armed and dangerous. Authorities are offering a 100,000 peso bounty for information that can lead to their arrest.
While they were escaping, may PDL din po na wala silang pakundangan na binaril. At naging wounded po yun. But we have received news yesterday that the PDL na nabaril nila ay nag-expire na po. At yun po ay palaya po sana within this month. So isa po yung ganun po ka-violent itong dalawa na hinahunting po natin.
The other day, two other fugitives, Pacifico Adlawan and Arwin Bio, were killed in a supposed firefight. Justice Secretary Manado Guevara said he wants to know how the inmates escaped from maximum security and how they were able to get firearms and other weapons. Guevara ordered the National Bureau of Investigation to look into the jailbreak. He also wants administrative sanctions against Bucor officials found guilty of gross neglect. Another vaccination site is opened in the city of Manila where you can walk around the park after getting your COVID shot. Our senior correspondent David Santos takes us to the Manila Zoo.
One moment, Mali the elephant is feeding on grass. Later, Manila Zoo's most famous resident is seen mingling with a group of journalists as if she has missed the crowd and is welcoming people she hasn't seen since the 2019 park shutdown. The Manila Zoo now adds to the growing list of vaccination sites in the city of Manila.
The goal here is to entice more young people and the elderly to get vaccinated. At the same time, promote the zoo's impending reopening after 3 years.
It's always about making opportunity, creating opportunity, accessibility, and convenience sa mga taong bayan na may option silang magpapakuna anytime habang nag-i-enjoy sa Manila Zoo.
Starting Wednesday until the end of the month, about 8,000 visitors will be accommodated here primarily for vaccination. Entrance is free for now. Just visit the zoo website. Some of those first to avail were in fact non-Manila residents. Among them, this grandma from Angono, Rizal.
Nung malaman namin na open dito, Manila Zoo, ay, punta tayo, tuloy pasyal.
And this Mandaluyong mom who brought along some kids.
Enjoy po sila. Birthday din po kasi nung pamangkin namin, kaya dito namin celebrate.
Medical experts praise the idea to bring COVID vaccination to the Manila Zoo.
Nakita niyo naman po yung mga peacock, yung mga agila po, yung mga fowlers. Nakaka-relax eh.
The animals on display are still limited since reconstruction is still ongoing. But for zookeepers, it's the idea of bringing back visitors that excites them the most.
Dito po kami sa Butterfly Garden.
Gloria has worked at the zoo for almost a quarter of a century.
Ito ang aming mga halaman na inaalaga namin dito.
She's due to retire next month.
Kung hindi lang ako mag-retire, ayoko pa umalis sa Manila Zoo eh. Para makita ko yung talaga enjoyment dito.
For now, she's more than happy to welcome the handful of guests in the rehabilitated, now better-looking Manila Zoo. David Santos, CNN Philippines.
Mayor Moreno says the city government is also planning to open another vaccination site at the Manila Bay Dolomite Beach. Meanwhile, Manila will soon have its own supply of the antiviral drug Bexovid. This is the world's first generic version of Pfizer's Paxlovid. The Food and Drug Administration granted Manila's compassionate special permit, which would allow the city to procure Bexovid. Global headlines now. A warning from the World Health Organization: the pandemic is nowhere near over. A top American doctor says while it is still too early to tell, the Omicron variant may signal a shift from pandemic to an endemic phase of the coronavirus. But that's only if no other variant escaping immunity emerges. Experts earlier said more variants may appear in areas with low vaccine coverage. The WHO reminding everyone no country is out of the woods yet, even if cases have peaked in some. Americans can now order free COVID-19 tests online as Omicron further spreads in the United States. It cost 99.5% of all new cases there last week, while Delta makes up the remaining tally. The White House opened federal website covidtest.gov, which will facilitate the supply of 4 free tests per household. These will be shipped within 7 to 12 days after placing the order. Meantime, a promising development from Pfizer, its oral antiviral drug Paxlovid is effective against the highly infectious new variant based on results from 3 separate laboratory studies. The studies show a main component of the drug has potential to prevent Omicron from replicating in cells. The treatment will still be monitored in real-world settings. Hong Kong, much like China, is taking drastic steps as it remains resolute in pursuing a zero-COVID strategy, the city's latest directive culling thousands of small animals after some hamsters were found with the coronavirus. CNN's Selena Wang has more.
Omicron is spreading in China just weeks ahead of the Beijing Winter Olympics. It's now in multiple cities across the country, the host city just reporting 3 new COVID cases, 2 of them linked to an Omicron case. In response, authorities have locked down residences, workplaces. Across China, some 20 million people are sealed in their homes. And so the Olympics will be taking place in China as many parts of the country are in wartime mode to stamp out the virus. But organizers are betting they can still pull off the Olympics successfully by keeping Olympic participants completely separate from the rest of the population and under extreme COVID rules. Meanwhile, Hong Kong is also doubling down on its zero-COVID strategy. The city says it's going to euthanize around 2,000 small animals, and all pet shops selling hamsters have to hand them over to be killed. These are extreme measures. These steps are in response to one shop worker testing positive for the Delta variant, along with nearly a dozen hamsters from the shop. And all of this despite health authorities saying that transmission from animals to humans is low. What this highlights is that as the rest of the world is learning to live with COVID, Hong Kong and mainland China are still trying to stamp out every last trace of the virus. Selena Wang, CNN, Tokyo.
The directive prompted outrage from pet owners and animal rights advocates. At least 18,000 people have signed a petition to stop the government-ordered culling. The Commission on Elections pushes back the printing of ballots for the 2022 polls to a later date. It was initially scheduled for today. COMELEC spokesperson James Jimenez says the printing committee took various technical factors into consideration, adding that the move will not impact preparations for the May elections. The 7th and final petition against presidential aspirant, former Senator Bongbong Marcos, now up for decision before the Commission on Elections' 2nd Division. The proceedings were concluded after the Marcos team and the Pudno nga Ilocano group submitted their final points on the disqualification case. The Ilocano group's petition seeks to kick Marcos out of the 2022 race because of his 1995 tax conviction and to have been banned from running for public office. In response, the Marcos camp insists that Marcos was allowed to run for many elective posts by the poll body in previous years. They also argue that the disqualification cannot be imposed anymore since he already paid the fines for the tax cases in 2001. COMELEC's 2nd Division already dismissed an earlier petition to cancel Marcos' certificate of candidacy filed by human rights groups represented by lawyer Theodore De. Here's what some 2022 aspirants are up to. Bongbong Marcos and Sara Duterte add 4 more senatorial bets to their ticket. Duterte said they are re-electionist Senator Win Gatchalian, former Quezon City Mayor Herbert Bautista, and former Defense Secretary Gibo Teodoro. Marcos also introduced Antigua Representative Lauren Legarda in the slate, but she was not at the event. Other senatorial aspirants present were former presidential spokesperson Harry Roque, former Senator Jinggoy Estrada, and former Public Works Secretary Mark Villar. This is also the first time Villar endorsed Marcos for president. Villar was earlier part of the senatorial ticket of the PDP Laban faction, led by Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi. Meanwhile, Ping Lacson slams the Agriculture Department's plan to import 60,000 metric tons of fish, namely galunggong and mackerel. The center says the DA might as well be killing fishermen through the move. Manny Pacquiao also against the move. He says the country should instead be exporting fish given its marine resources. And Vice President Leni Robredo says more help should be given to micro, small, and medium enterprises to generate jobs amid the pandemic. Robredo says the government should provide capital to MSMEs as well as stimulus grants in condition that the employer will not lay off workers. Coming up on Newsnight, fans of Asia's Phoenix can celebrate Morissette Amon's decade in music through a digital concert this month. And we give you details on another highly anticipated event, a look at the When We Were Young Festival's punk band lineup after the break. Welcome back to CNN Philippines. I'm Pia Ontiveros. To mark 10 years of making music, Morissette Amon is taking her powerhouse vocals to the digital stage. The viral pop sensation is set to hold Phoenix, an online concert, on January 23 and 24. But for this event, Morissette is also taking on the role of a co-producer for the first time.
Syempre, we have a lot of songs in this concert. There's choreography and just how we shot the concert also. It kind of feels like a movie na may mga blockings kami. So, hindi siya yung typical concert natin na live na kung saan ka pa pwesto sa stage, go, okay na yan.
The star also talked about how she envisions her career for the next decade. Morissette said she hopes to release more original songs and help raise the Filipino flag through her work. Still in music, people who grew up with punk songs may get nostalgic over this Las Vegas festival's lineup. From Avril Lavigne to My Chemical Romance, the When We Were Young stage will bring together some of the most famous emo artists of the 2000s this October 22. A netizen says the event reminds them of their old iTunes playlists. Paramore announced their appearance in the festival, saying, "We've missed you." This will be the band's first show since going on a hiatus in 2018. The concept of a new streaming series may sound familiar. How I Met Your Father is a sequel to the long-running sitcom How I Met Your Mother. CNN's David Daniel lets us in on what to expect with the show's creators and stars.
It was hard to live in the moment in 2022. There was always someplace else you could be, someone else you could be with.
How I Met Your Father updates and diversifies its predecessor, How I Met Your Mother, with a new group of young New Yorkers led by Hilary Duff.
I know this might sound crazy, but I've been on 87 Tinder dates this year.
The show's creators cop to being big fans of the original series.
We continue to love the world of just being young in that chapter of life where your friends feel like your family and you're coming up and trying to figure out your career and your love life.
It's really hard to meet someone and connect and have it feel easy.
We had characters on the page and we had ideas of who these people were in our heads, but you want to be flexible. If you see something that's magic, you want to write towards it. You want to make it work for your show.
And I remember my manager telling me, like, they really want to cast first and see who's going to play these characters to really write around them. And I was like, oh, so it was fun to know that I had the freedom to really, really create.
The first table read where we all got to be together, I think all of us left with like that little chill down your spine feeling of like, holy, that worked. And I think we have a show.
We all really do get along very clearly, offset as well as on. And that alone, I think, makes our show very special to watch.
New relationships, new friendships. But to get to have that universe to play in and then go a different direction is so exciting.
Through being mature. Yes, we can still make bad choices for a few more years.
In Hollywood, I'm David Daniel.
And that's it for tonight. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.